My name is Alan. I had a paranormal experience when I was 29 years old, working on an assignment in Spring City, Pennsylvania. My emotions were a mix of anticipation and anxiety, as I set out to tackle my first significant assignment as a building inspector. However, I was completely unprepared for the spine-chilling events that would transpire that very day. It was an early Monday morning in late April of 1989. And I was gearing up for work while Tracy, my wife, was about to take our kids to school. We savored a delightful breakfast before all departing that our eldest son, Joseph, who had recently mastered the art of pancake making, had prepared. Tracy wished me well just as Brian, my co-worker and partner for the day, arrived. "Ready to roll, boss?" Brian welcomed me as I entered his truck. Although I felt the term boss might be a bit premature for a newcomer like me, I appreciated the friendly gesture. I confirmed, and we made our way. Our destination was what people nowadays refer to as Pennhurst Asylum, a place renowned for its eerie paranormal incidents. However, back in '89, it hadn't quite yet gained the prominent reputation it holds today for being haunted. As we arrived at the location, we were greeted by the size of the large brick structures that made up the school and hospital. The complex had been abandoned for a couple years, and our mission was to ensure that these areas met the necessary building regulations. I noted the chilly, gloomy weather to Brian. The early morning fog brought a more ominous atmosphere to the campus. Upon entering the Mayflower building and walking down its halls, it was clear that a significant portion of it had already been stripped down, leaving behind empty rooms and hallways with some wheelchairs, gurneys, and couches still in place. It had an undeniable eerie atmosphere, I must admit. Brian and I were diligently jotting down notes about various aspects like structural support, mold presence, and potential fire hazards, among many others. Our pens were racing across the paper as there was a lot to note. Brian, with his expertise, was guiding me through the nuances that often escaped my notice. As he explained, the door to the room we were in started to creak, gradually closing itself. Our eyes now fixed on it. Just before it sealed shut, it suddenly slammed loudly, causing both of us to jump in surprise, and Brian losing his coffee. "Ah, darn it," Brian grumbled as he realized he had spilled coffee on his clothes. "That scared the crap out of me," he admitted. I asked, "Did that just happen?" We shared a brief, unsettling glance at each other before breaking into a light laughter. Brian gave me an encouraging pat on the back and said, "All right, let's stay focused and get this done." I agreed. As we proceeded down the hallways, I filled Brian in on the recent history of Pennhurst Asylum, as he was curious and not as aware. Just a couple of years before our assignment, the Pennhurst Asylum had been shut down due to the mistreatment of its residents. Investigators had uncovered appalling living conditions and extensive instances of both physical and mental abuse. One example of the many is, the patients had their teeth removed completely because at the time, there was no treatment to stop them from biting at the bars of their beds or themselves. Sadly, these dire circumstances and conditions resulted in multiple fatalities. We found ourselves back out in the foggy mist, although it has receded a bit. We had to head over to the administration building of the campus before calling it a wrap for the day. Brian opened the door, revealing the building inside. The atmosphere inside the building resembled the previous one. The walls showed signs of tear, furniture laid scattered and covered in dust, and the pervasive presence of mold visible with a musty smell. The profound silence that enveloped the space added to its unsettling ambience. I maintained my focus, determined to make my first day a success. I made my way through the halls, noting any major concerns. While inspecting one of the rooms, I suddenly heard footsteps approaching from behind. Assuming it was Brian, I turned around, only to discover that he was not present in the room. I shouted, "Brian?" into the echoing silence, but there was no reply, only eerie quietness. Moments later, I felt a sudden grasp around my waist, as if someone had briefly hugged me. A surge of fear engulfed me, prompting me to dash in search of Brian. When I found him a couple rooms down, he asked, "What's the matter, Alan?" I proceeded to recount my unsettling encounter, and he admitted to having heard faint noises himself. We continued our work, conversing about the unsettling atmosphere and keeping close to one another. Soon, we reached a staircase that led down into a dark and disturbing basement. It marked the last portion of our reporting for the day, and we descended into the depths. We switched on our flashlights to enhance our vision in the exceedingly dark passageways. Some stretches were completely void of any light, with only our flashlight beams to guide us. While navigating these corridors, I had a lingering sense of an ominous presence was watching over me. Faint echoes of unidentified sounds emanated from the shadows. Brian's breathing problems worsened, and he broke into more coughing fits. The mold's impact on him was evident, underlining the necessity to treat these buildings and halls. "Brian, are you all right?" I asked. "It's getting tough to breathe down here," his voice accompanied by coughing as he attempted to clear his throat. While Brian was hunched over, grappling with coughing, I felt a ghostly force push me, causing me to tumble over a wheelchair and drop my flashlight, which clattered and rolled across the floor. After quickly ensuring I was unhurt, I moved to retrieve my flashlight. In that moment, I glimpsed a dark and menacing figure standing at the end of the long hallway. I froze in astonishment when my gaze struck it. "Come on, we should get out of here," Brian insisted, his attempts to clear his throat persisting. We both swiftly started to exit the corridors. A subtle and unsettling fog gradually crept into the halls, worsening the visibility as we neared the stairs. The dim morning sun cast a feeble light, offering slight relief. Just as ascending back up the stairs, we both could hear the faint sounds of children giggling in the abyss below, adding to the spine-chilling anxiety we were already experiencing. While Brian's breathing issues were gradually getting better, I continued to assist him. Together, we left the administrative building and re-emerged outside, where the sun was starting to break through the previously overcast cloudy sky. Immediately, it felt like a truly fortunate turn of events. After a brief pause to catch our breath and regroup, we both began to feel a bit more at ease. I playfully asked, "Shall we head back inside?" but also had some reservations due to this being our job. "No, we need to return with more thorough preparation for a place like this," Brian replied. That was reassuring to hear. Brian and I decided to take a leisurely walk around the campus grounds before departing, allowing us to reminisce about our experience and survey the various unsettling buildings from the outside. We had no intentions of further investigating their interiors that day. They were too unnerving, and we had a legitimate excuse to attribute our reluctance to the mold issue. Brian and I were no longer tasked with assignments to Pennhurst, primarily because of its highly unfavorable conditions and the indefinite delay of numerous ongoing projects for the buildings we had examined. Instead, I received a more straightforward job involving new apartment developments, which presented fewer haunting circumstances to my luck. Decades have passed, and I have since retired. I have discovered a while back that Pennhurst now offers haunted tours, which has both intrigued and concerned me. I haven't set foot inside any of those buildings since the day I was there with Brian. My fear is that I could potentially encounter the same inexplicable forces once more, and the lingering impact of that previous encounter makes me feel more susceptible to their haunting.